All right. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. I just wanted to start there with a nice video of all the selfies that you took and submitted. I really appreciate it. First off, thank you for coming in. We're going to jump right in to a presentation, but I wanted to start. We wanted to start with a little bit of a something that came up as an interesting project this year. This was or this quarter. This was some music that was produced from Mr. Smith, Sella Roth, and Marissa Panettiere. So I'm gonna, if I can, share my screen again, and we're gonna show or have this audio play.
Love you, but long as there are stars above you, you'll never need to doubt it. I'll make you so sure about it. God only knows what I'd be without you. If you should ever leave me, the life would still go on, believe me. Could show nothing to me, so what good would living do me? God only knows what I'd be without you. If you should ever leave me, the life would still go on, believe me. The world could show nothing to me, so what good would living do me? God only knows what I'd be without you.
God only knows.
Wonderful, thank you. Yeah, super claps. So to begin, I wanted to start there. First, let me introduce myself. I'm Dr. Matt Troutman, incoming head of school at Thomas Jefferson School, for those that are new here. And I think it was important to start our event tonight with a piece there from wonderful, talented students and faculty. And this was not part of a project. This was just something that came up organically in our fourth quarter. And I wanted to start there to celebrate just the special community that we have here. And all of you here are contributors to that community, so thank you. Okay, so if we can jump into what we're gonna talk about tonight, we're gonna kind of go chronologically from where have we been, looking back at the fourth quarter, that was very successful. We're going to hear about graduation and some of the transition from Dr. Holkamp. We're going to also take some time to celebrate some interesting stories from the fourth quarter, and that'll be with Dr. Heumann. We're then going to shift to what are we focusing on now. And so I'm going to talk about what we are looking at, what we are planning for, and beginning to start to bridge the gap between the fourth quarter and the next school year. Mrs. Walsh is going to take a moment to just talk about enrollment and some of our new families coming in. Mr. Pesic will then be that bridge to the next school year, talking about MyTJS. which is our student information system, the kind of backbone of TJ from an electronic and digital perspective. Mrs. Roth is then going to talk about some of the academic planning that we have for the fourth quarter, or for the next school year. And then Mrs. Winchell, who is our president of the Board of Trustees, will talk about 2021 and beyond. So at this point, I want to hand it over to Dr. Holkamp, who will talk about graduation 2020.
Thanks, Dr. Troutman. Hi, everyone. I'm really glad that Dr. Troutman had a couple of minutes to get this thing mapped out, because it's given me a chance to get the lump out of my throat and the tears maybe out of my eyes, just looking at all of those wonderful selfies and listening, to that song, as if I needed to be reminded of how much I miss all of you and have missed you sorely since we all had to part company. And when I think about this year, my two favorite times of year are opening day and graduation. So the bookends. And I love those times because of the joy that runs throughout those days. And of course, we had what was pretty much a normal opening day this year, and it was full of joy. And then all of a sudden, the joy went away because we all had to go away. And the big question became, what was graduation going to be? And there's no getting around the fact that doing a virtual graduation, certainly was not the joyful event that we've become accustomed to, and that I know I myself have always looked forward to. But we did it. Everybody graduated. We had graduation in a box. We did a lot of interesting things. One thing that we did that actually I really loved, and I'm recommending to Dr. Troutman that he keep it one way or another, were the individual senior videos that we rolled out. And that worked out really well, because with 20 seniors, I frankly was a little concerned about the prospect of a normal graduation and having everybody have to sit there for an hour listening to me drone on and on. It was really nice to be able to spread them out over 20 days. I loved doing that. So I just want to thank everyone who played a part in that, everyone who made that fourth quarter work and work well. It was just an incredibly impressive and moving experience for me to see how everyone stepped up and played a part. We really have an amazing team. We have an amazing village, and that's everybody. That starts with the students, goes on through faculty, staff, parents, grandparents, our board of trustees, everyone contributed. So I just want to issue a blanket thank you to all of you for having made this such a spectacular year and a really interesting way for me to go into retirement. But I'm going to stay in touch, and I'll be very interested to see how this year plays out. Having said that, obviously we're in transition. I am going to be handing the keys over to Dr. Troutman very soon, and he is ready to go. He never dreamt that he would be transitioning in this way, but I'm so thankful that he and I have had this year to work together, and he's had this spring to really think long and hard and marshal all of the resources that are going to be necessary to have a successful summer and next year. And you're going to hear all about that coming up. So I will stop talking now, and I will simply enjoy these next moments when I get to listen to all the voices I've really enjoyed and loved working with all of these 9 years. Thank you very much. Dr. T, back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Holkamp. I can't stress enough how lucky we are to have this transition year, but also to have just such a great leader to help show me how to get started in the right way. One just point of that I forgot to mention at the beginning was that Mr. Pesic has volunteered to kind of mine the chat for questions if they come up. And we are setting some time aside at the very end to address any questions that might come up. At this point, I want to hand it over to Dr. Holkamp to start to talk about, or sorry, Dr. Human. Dr. Holkamp has already had some time. Dr. Human, if you could talk about our fourth quarter.
Thank you, Dr. Troutman. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to be with all of you. It's a pleasure to be with all of you. There we go. Sorry, too much unmuting. So I wanted to start off saying that one of the things that I found really amazing about fourth quarter is looking at the way that various parts of our community came together. We've broken it up in this and we'll walk through it, but just looking at the way that our community really shone this quarter. It may surprise you to know that this was not actually what we had originally planned for fourth quarter. But in some ways, our students, parents, faculty took what was a problem and turned it into an opportunity. So our students, they created this amazing community together. One of the things that, we heard was that students would set up sort of schedules to text each other to make sure that they were staying in touch. One student related that he had sent pictures of himself riding a rooster to wish people good morning. So that certainly happened. But it was to create the impression of walking through the common room and saying hello to everyone in the morning. Students also created all sorts of other ways to meet up. There were Zoom lunches where people got together. There were people who studied together by turning on Zoom and sitting in separate rooms working on the same thing to chat back and forth. So students really built the sense of community they have at TJ outside the walls virtually. They also mastered all sorts of new technologies. We don't use Zoom in usual classroom instruction at TJ. We tend to talk to each other in person. So they figured out all of these new things. They figured out how to use my TJS. They figured out how to put up a custom background with thousands of pictures of Miss Fairbank. They did things like learning stop motion animation on their own because they thought it would be a really cool way to work on a project. So they really dove into the technological challenges and then dove back out of them to help their peers, to help me, to help other members of the faculty figure out how to best get together in this strange world we were thrown into. They always turn in amazing work, but this quarter, I was particularly impressed by seeing some of the examples. I know the 7th grade art class created cookbooks for part of their project, and I was getting desperately hungry while reading the comments, hearing the descriptions of the artwork and the recipes they'd created. I don't think that we can really step past the fact that the 8th grade play went on. I know that acting types say the show must go on, but this seems above and beyond all reasonable expectations. But those kids worked incredibly hard, figured out how to create props at home, how to record, how to give the impression of interacting with each other when they were miles apart. It was truly phenomenal. Things like hiding videos of Prince Charles' smile to the backdrop of ABBA's Waterloo in their physics assignments, and just sort of these moments where the kids really showed that they were facing this challenge with certainly a sense of humor and often a good one, were really amazing. And then they just turned in some visually stunning, creative, awesome work that shows that they are learning and thinking just in phenomenal ways. I think the next, so you can see some of the examples of this where you have comics showing, like the life cycle of a star, some memeified mythology, bringing together sort of their digital and analog lives in ways that really show that they completely understand both the mythology and the humor of today. And then just some phenomenal ways of imagining what they're learning. I particularly love this biology project and soap opera that comes in. Like, I could never have imagined that, but when you look at it, it's beautiful. Also, they showed us their understanding in ways that we really, really couldn't have imagined. I think it's the next slide, where a student translated Meet Me in St. Louis into ancient Greek. So if you're putting on Meet Me in St. Louis in ancient Greek, somebody's done the background work for you. You could just pick up there. So if anybody's doing that, please let us know. not only were our students working hard and adapting, so were our teachers. Spring break was spent adapting curriculum, figuring out what it is that is essentially TJ and how we could communicate it in our not particularly usually TJ kind of way. Teachers were connecting with students, figuring out how to communicate across oceans, how to get everybody together in the classroom, how to also to use the new technologies without, well, I won't say without hitches, but with fewer hitches than one would hope. Teachers also communicated in new media, but keeping it sort of essentially TJ. I don't know if everybody has seen Mr. Roth's presentation of the National Greek Awards. If you haven't, you should go back and watch it. It is phenomenal. If only to watch Mr. Roth interact with an entire audience of stuffed toys in his living room, standing in for various students. I actually assume that this was just this is normal life that he's decided to film now, but it is great. And the sort of, I know for me as a teacher, one of the sort of silver linings to our pandemic cloud is that in trying out new ways of interacting, I've learned some things about my teaching that I know I'm going to be using next year, but also hopefully for the rest of my teaching career. Things about sort of different configurations of students in small groups and running discussions and asking questions. I think that we've really learned and grown through that. And finally, I want to move on to our community, our parents, our alums, the way that parents were thrust into the front seat of their children's education. I know that for myself as a parent, that was a challenging life to live for the past 3 months. And the way that that parents in the TJ community supported us, supported their students, gave us feedback, sharing with us what was working and sometimes what needed improvement. The way that the entire community, alums, parents, past parents, current students, faculty, attended programs that helped build our communities. Things like the TJ Review, like coming together on a Tuesday afternoon or evening to talk about a short story or a poem just because it was fun is really an integral part of what TJ is. And genuinely, we want to help you for doing that and for helping us educate our students. Coming together for things like the COVID-19 panel, where a past parent and current board member and then an alum came together to share their expertise with students in the AP biology and the AP chemistry classes and the rest of the community about the very thing that was pushing us apart. So I know that I left fourth quarter with an understanding that I belonged to a vibrant, brilliant, evolving community from which no one ever escapes. And that was a really phenomenal sort of gift to be given. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Human. Yeah, that's, we are at a place where we are because of the faculty and staff who work tirelessly to set up for the fourth quarter to be as successful as possible. So I'm going to talk about what we're thinking about right now and what we're planning right now, knowing that there is a lot of uncertainty, unfortunately, at this time. So if we kind of take a big picture look at what trends are showing us in health impacts now, what we see is that there is a lot of unpredictability. Predictions of having seen the worst and already passed through it, anticipating a worst coming up in the future, or somewhere in between, or possibly going back and forth between those states. If we think about how that would impact our community, I think it speaks to the need for flexibility. I heard from a health professional that works in an education space that we should be working in pencil and not in pen at this time. And I think that's an important thing to note. Whatever plans we talk about today, next week, a month from now, those may or may not be the actual plans as we get to August and opening day. So if we talk about what it looks like and what we're paying attention to and how that's going to impact the community, I think a key idea that I'm taking away from a lot of experts is that we're trying to look for ways to reduce risk. We can't eliminate it fully. The same thing is true when we just drive onto campus. We can't eliminate all the risk there because we are on the roads coming to the community. The same thing will be true here, is we're trying to lower the risk of any kind of impacts from a health perspective on our students. Interestingly, last week, I got to be a part of a panel with local heads of school that were talking to a group of health professionals connected with WashU, Washington University here in St. Louis, but also are connected with some of the policy making that the county is producing. And what surprised me in a positive way was that all of their language was talking about in-person classes starting in the fall. And so I want to start with that point, is that we are planning to be in person in the fall. Now, is that our only plan? Of course not. We are going to look at these different scenarios. I've heard different schools have been working with up to somewhere around 20 to 30 scenarios that they might be anticipating. We're maybe not at that level of number of scenarios, but we certainly have a lot that we are planning for. And it's at this point that I want to kind of note that there are different aspects that we are looking at. There's a academic aspect and how that is going to play in the fall. So we have a group that is explicitly working on that. That's our faculty and staff who produced such an amazing fourth quarter. We have a different group working on student health, residential life, and the impacts that we might have on our community. That's another group of experts that are in our TJ community that are thinking about that and looking for making plans and priorities. And we have another group that's working on the financial impact, operations impact, and any kind of budgetary items that might come up due to this crisis. So all along the way, for each of these different areas, we have groups of people, amazing teachers, faculty, staff, that have produced an amazing fourth quarter that gives me a lot of pride looking backwards and hope looking forwards that we're gonna do this at the level that we would expect for TJ. So let me get a little bit more granular into our planning. I should point out that we are not alone, even though we have experts internally. We rely on a lot of expertise externally as well. So places like the Center for Disease Control, St. Louis County Health Department, the Department of State would be national organizations that are looking at concerns for health, safety, travel, visa issues. We're looking at other organizations for educational ideas. Groups like the Association of Boarding Schools, which is known as TABS. This is our organization that works with a number of boarding schools and helps provide guidance for what schools should expect to do. At the local level, we have an Independent Schools of St. Louis, and a local group that meets regularly to talk about issues that are impacting the St. Louis education area. And then in the Midwest, we have ISACs that is working on our Midwest School Association. And then the National Organization of Independent Schools as well. We have outside organizations like National Business Officers, the Enrollment Management Agency. These are other organizations that are providing guidance to us to help with these decisions. So if we look at a very high level, the first place that we are going to start is from guidance from the St. Louis County or potentially from the state of Missouri. From a health perspective, they are going to tell us what is going to be required, recommended, allowed, or not allowed. Frankly, I think if we look at what other organizations are doing, the county has provided guidance for places like restaurants, spas, gyms, hairdresser salons. They have guidance for that. They have not produced guidance for schools yet. We anticipate that to come sometime in the middle or the end of this month is when we should get that. But that is going to be our guiding principle in terms of what we can do, what we can't do, what testing is required, what type of safety is required, what type of actions are recommended, and what is allowed or not allowed. But if we look at general principles and go forward to say, what should we start looking at? We do know that things like social distancing will be important for our classroom spaces. And I just need to take a moment to kind of geek out here, because never did I anticipate ever having to get into what's known as packing theory, packing efficiency. So how do you put the most number of people into a classroom space with a safe social distance? And so whether we're talking about rows and columns, square packing or hexagonal packing, those are actual conversations that are happening right now for planning for the number of students that we can put into a classroom safely. And again, there's a lot that we don't know because the guidance has not been produced yet. But if we look at general ideas, we do know that there will be procedures that we need for things like screening, testing, and general protection within the community. Fortunately, I want to talk about each of these independently. It's very interesting that the app we have been using, Boardingware, we've been using this app to monitor students leaving or coming to campus, right? So we have Boardingware as an app for sign out procedures. We have a really good relationship with this organization, this company. We were one of the first schools that signed up with them, and we have, I'm not sure what the official status is, but we are a preferred school within the Boardingware community. Interestingly, we know that screening is going to be a requirement of some sort, screening for health. Boardingware is producing a part of their app that is going to look at screening procedures explicitly. So with an app that we already use and are familiar with, we're going to be able to get assistance to do some of the screening processes that will be required. Again, we don't know exactly what those are because the county, the state has not provided that specific guidance, but we can look to other states that have produced guidance, like Connecticut is another state that has produced some. And we know that screening is going to be important. So Boardingware can help with that. In terms of testing, this is very interesting. St. Louis TJ will work with the Department of Health in the county to report any kind of issues with testing. If somebody tests positive, for example, we have to report that. And then they go through a process called contact tracing. And this is where you kind of identify other people who might have a potential for being exposed and might need to stay at home just for safety. Johns Hopkins University has offered a free course to actually start contact tracing. So this is another opportunity where we might be able to internally have students participate, interested faculty and staff could go through this training and become unofficial contact tracers within our community. I think it could show how important this is to keeping the community safe. And it might be something that shows up in Ms. DeJesus or Mrs. Peroni's biochem class. And then finally, in terms of protection, again, I want to point out that guidance has not been produced quite yet on whether masks are going to be required or not. We can say that we will probably have masks in public spaces and we will have to have masks. So I throw up a photo here of Mrs. Troutman and myself at the drive-through event showing that. So overall, I just want to point out that the people who are developing these procedures, developing what we are going to do in the fall, are the people that got us to the fourth quarter so successfully. I mentioned I'm very proud of what we accomplished and hopeful for the future, but it really is a team effort. We have experts internally that are getting guidance from experts externally and producing the safest environment that we can to produce the TJ experience that we know and love. So at this point, I want to that's a very narrow focus of what we're looking at and what we're paying attention to right now. I want to introduce or bring in Mrs. Walsh to kind of talk about this bridging the gap between last year and this next school year. Mrs. Walsh did get, let me try.
There we go.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. T. Hello, everyone. My name is Mrs. Erin Walsh. I'm the Director of Enrollment at Thomas Jefferson School. I just want to explicitly welcome all of our new families and new students who are joining us this evening. We're so excited to welcome you onto campus in the fall and to fold you into this incredible community. So we're so glad that you're with us and could join us this evening. Just a couple notes about enrollment and looking forward. Something really unique about Thomas Jefferson School being a boarding and day school is we were already in a number of ways operating an admissions process virtually as well as in person. So when we were pivoting fourth quarter, as my faculty colleagues were pivoting curriculum, the classroom experience, I and the advancement team were thinking about how we would be pivoting the admission processes basically fourth quarter and what it could look like moving forward. So there were a number of tools that we were already using and had at our disposal, from virtual view books to campus tours, virtual campus tours to Skype. We've formally transitioned to Zoom, where the admissions is a Zoom experience now. We've moved away from Skype, but we had that incredible benefit of already having some familiarity with what it looked like to conduct a fully virtual admissions process. For a number of our international families, they complete the entire admissions enrollment process up to opening day completely online. So it gave us an opportunity to really put some additional thoughts, some additional eyeballs onto what that experience would feel like for the user, for the student and their family. So thinking about next year, is Dr. T and Dr. Human have shared, we're very much planning in pencil and not pen. We're moving a number of things forward, as we always do in this time of year, planning open houses and such, what the process will look, dates and deadlines. But we're also planning for a few different scenarios, also what a hybrid program would look like, again, a partial virtual experience, partial in-person experience, and then what the process would look like if it had to be entirely virtual. Some organizations that Dr. T mentioned, the Enrollment Management Association, they've been incredibly supportive as admission directors around the country and around the globe have been considering all of these different options, different opportunities, different challenges. And we've also been working very closely with the Standard Application Online, which does service our online applications, as well as SSAT, which is our standardized test. So there's been a number of flexibilities and enhancements in some of these programs as well, including some online testing, virtual proctoring, et cetera. We're excited to have that as another tool in our toolkit as we're moving folks through the process. So I'm thrilled to share that we are welcoming new students from around the globe, 10 cities and 3 countries. As with most of our peer schools in the US and in St. Louis and in the US and around the globe, we are still accepting rolling applications for grades 7, 8, 9, and 10. So if you are talking to families that are considering a change, please do put them in contact with me. I'd be happy to talk to them about TJ and put them in contact with our incredible students and faculty. We are moving forward with 2 open house dates, so please mark your calendars. We know that we love having all of our students and parents to be able to share in these special events and share and celebrate TJ. So right now we're looking at a Wednesday evening, November 18th, Wednesday, January 27th in the evening as well. Again, those are certainly in pencil, so please use pencil in your calendars as well, and we will revisit those if and when we need to put them online. Dr. T, I'll turn it back to you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Walsh. Yeah, I think that we're really excited to introduce some new families, and they're joining us today. So welcome to everyone who's here for the first time. So at this point, I wanted to talk about one of the tools that we're going to use to bridge this gap from last year to what the fall is going to look like, and that's with MyTJS. So Mr. Pesic, I will introduce you.
Hi everyone, Jim Pesic, and first I want to point out that this switch to MyTJS from Google Classroom and other previous systems we were using was an interesting transition for us this year. I think there were aspects where they didn't go quite as we anticipated, and we're definitely grateful to all of our students and families and staff for being patient with us as you know, we've hit a few snags in the transition, and as you guys have sometimes had some issues with logging in or things like that. But that said, I think we are incredibly fortunate that the year that we got this new system, that we got it before the events of this year happened, because just the sheer amount of advantages and tools available to us using the MyTJS system provided for a much smoother transition this quarter than we ever could have even hoped for in any previous year. So we're very grateful for that. For new students and their families, you have been just starting out in the MyTJS system as part of the enrollment and admissions process, and you will be getting much more into it as time goes by. And this really will continue to be our hub, our home for all TJ related things. This is where class information happens. This is where information about events and news and anything like that is going to happen. And so even as the summer progresses, I encourage you to log in regularly, check that news feed, check the resources. There's going to be a lot of information available through this system. And as time goes by, we are transitioning even more into it. So whereas there are some forms that, you know, in previous years would have been filled out as paper forms or in other formats over the summer, all those forms, like, you know, permission for treatment and updating medical information, but also, you know, signing up for SAC events and all that kind of stuff. That's all going to be happening as forms in this new system. So please be ready for those and check. We will let you know as new forms are available and can be accessed as the summer progresses and then into the next school year. As a further exciting new step of that, our TJ website is also going to be transitioning. We are hoping that it should go live this fall, not too long after the start of the new school year. And that website will also be through the Blackbaud system, which is the backend system of MyTJS, which will really improve communication through there. And it's really about integrating all of our systems together to provide you, our families, with the most effective and useful methods of getting all the information that you need. So we're really excited about that. And then the other thing that we are going to be doing is adding alumni to the system this fall. that will also coincide roughly with opening day in the fall. And while so far we have limited access to students and their families, soon all of the alumni will also be joining us in that community. And we're really, really excited about that because we're looking at all sorts of ways of helping connect current and past and future students all together with, mentorship, communicating about colleges, communicating about jobs, communicating about so many things about life after TJ, and really having this system help us bridge that gap between current families and our alumni base. So stay tuned. There's so much more coming on that front. So back to Matt.
Thank you, Mr. Pesic. Just a quick question for you, Mr. Pesic. Technically, our class of 2020, who are now alumni, are they connected to MyTJS still?
Absolutely. Their login will not change. It'll be the exact same process. It'll be probably the smoothest transition for them because they'll already be familiar with the system. But just because you have graduated does not mean that you are booted out of the system by any means. You are welcomed into the alumni portion of it. So
that's awesome. Yeah, this is going to be a great new tool for us. So let's continue that transition as we look more specifically towards the fall and some of the academic planning that we've been doing. And I'll turn it over to Mrs. Roth, our Director of Academics, to speak to this.
Thanks for any new students joining us out there. I'm the one who's been sending you emails with your new login information, so you can put the face to the name at the bottom of the email. It's nice to see you. So I get to talk about the school part of school, which indeed feels important, and talk about the approach that we're taking to planning for next year. In many ways, we've approached thinking about planning for next year in the same way we began planning for fourth quarter. Our starting point always has to be what makes TJ TJ. This school exists to provide something different, right? That's why you are all here. Students experience learning different things different subject areas than they might in another school. They learn them in different ways. The people that they're bumping up against, even elbow bumping in the early days of this business, are different from in other schools. So in order to translate the TJ experience into whatever it's going to look like, we have to start by getting very clear on what defines that TJ experience. First, it's the high level of interaction and engagement that happens not just in the physical classrooms, but in teachers' offices and places around campus. Next, the academic work that we put in front of the students has to be designed to challenge the kind of high ability learners that are attracted to TJ, the ones who crave complexity and depth and analysis and hard work, if you can believe it. Third, and this is really a hallmark of the TJ experience, I think, we hear this from alumni all the time, that cultivation of independence and personal responsibility for their own learning. And finally, and I believe this is such a function of our size, the fact that the students know that we get them, right? They feel understood, and they know that we need them as leaders who are going to strengthen our community from within. So what have we learned from our fourth quarter experiences? We're fortunate that all of this hit at a time of the year when the relationships that I just described we're already solid. When most of the content, especially in courses like AP courses, had already been learned. But planning for a new school year, which depends on the successful development of relationships, requires a new way of thinking. And our fourth quarter can teach us a lot in terms of how we need, excuse me, how we need to move forward in that planning. We know that we need more face-to-face time than anyone experienced during the fourth quarter. Face-to-face time in the instructional setting, face-to-face time in those more informal office hours where students get the individual help that they need. We also know that the students want and need more opportunities for social and extracurricular interaction with one another. So it is on us to figure out how to make that happen in whatever format we land on for next fall. We know that while we were able to make use of technologies that were available to us, a hybrid format for learning and instruction will require additional pieces. Infrastructure, additional training for faculty and perhaps for students as well, though we've learned that they pick things up a lot faster than we do. And using tools, the tools that Mr. Pesic was describing that my TJS offers for regular and effective communication with families ensures that we are able to partner together for the best possible outcomes for our students. Click to the next slide. There you go. All right, so this is the million-dollar question. And this is the question with the fewest concrete answers right now. We know that we are looking at a very flexible hybrid format that hopes to allow us to be in person as much as possible, but also has to allow for the potential of another stay-at-home order, for example, or for a scenario in which individuals might need to quarantine or self-isolate. This means that a high-quality remote method for learning and instruction has to be in place at all times, because we just don't know what we can guarantee. So as Dr. T said, we have to plan for every scenario, and we are doing that. Just yesterday, I was studying, I think, 7 different models of the type that Dr. T described, A days and B days and cohorts and one course at a time. And, all of these, no one model is going to serve the needs of our unique school, in part because we are boarding, and that adds a whole other layer to our planning. So just know that the bottom line is that we are exploring many, many models to reach the decisions that are going to keep our students safe and deliver a seriously quality education. So the community piece, yeah, thanks. Sorry, back up again. There you go. All right. So how do we build community when we can't guarantee that we're all going to be in the same physical space? It's a puzzle that we are going to have to figure out. Experiences, for example, like the all-school trip that has become a beloved tradition, and which we had planned for September, have to be reimagined. And we can put a backup date on the calendar, which we have done for the spring, should some miracle happen. But the reality is we have to be planning creatively for new types of experience that are going to help us build a community of people who care for and about each other, when some of those people might not be able to meet each other in person for a while. The bottom line is that we have incredible minds, right? As Dr. T described, minds within community, within our TJ community, experts from without, informing our plans and ensuring that that all of you students who are watching this tonight are going to get the best education that feels like a TJ education and receive the highest levels of support and stay safe. Can flip to the next slide, please. So I'm going to ask two of my colleagues, Beth Human, who's TJ's middle school coordinator, and Boaz Roth, to whom I think I'm related by marriage, to describe. He's also the English department chair and the Greek teacher, which is his area of expertise in this conversation, to describe two important curricular adjustments that have been made with the dual goal of keeping students safe, but also giving them the most impactful learning experience. So I'm going to turn it over first to Dr. Human to talk about the middle school program.
So as Mrs. Roth said, we have these dual goals, the strongest academic background, but also keeping students safe. So one of the things that we're doing for next year is we're combining several classes, the 7th and 8th grade. So it's a middle school class. I know that some of it was communicated to middle school parents in an email, but I just want to reiterate all of the middle school students will be taking the principles of biochem next year, and then next year 7th graders will take earth science the next year. The fine arts class will be drama for both groups. And then the one that I'm really excited about is the sort of larger change, which is the combination of social studies and English into one humanities class. And I'm not just excited because I get to teach it and I get to make bad puns about my name, although that is really up there at the top. One of the things that I think people get out of a TJ education is the ability to think, to read, to write, to analyze, to contextualize, and to appreciate that language is the foundation of knowledge. And so by combining the study of social studies and the study of English, we can really build a foundation for middle school students that will set them up for the rest of their life at TJ and beyond. I could go on about this for hours. I will not. We're also going to keep them in unique math and Latin classes because those are things with more linear progressions. If you ever want to talk to me about why I'm excited about this, send me an email. I'll hop on Zoom. So over to Mr. Roth.
Okay, well, before I talk about this, there's huge news. Dr. Human, you mentioned the film that Orly and I put together. There is a sequel coming this summer called Dr. Holcamp's Final Assembly. I don't know if it's going to be in movie theaters, but it's going to be broadcast over the TJ network. We just have to go in the basement and find more ugly stuffed animals to depict the rising 10th grade boys. But trust me, there will be another movie coming up this summer to laud Dr. Holcamp's great years at Thomas Jefferson. Okay, so Mrs. Roth mentioned a couple of things earlier that we really want more face-to-face time because that's an important part of any education, but especially at TJ. And community is crucial to us. So after we combined the humanities, we started looking for other places where there might be a natural connection between classes. And we came up with two. If we take the 9th and 10th grade and blend them together in Greek, which is the easier of the two for me to explain, it should be a pretty seamless transition because freshmen study Homeric Greek, sophomores study Attic Greek. There's a lot of overlap, but Greek is a lot like math. You spend the first part of the year reviewing the last part of the year. So all the rising freshmen will be in the same boat as the rising sophomores. And truth be told, wherever Greek is still taught in America, usually Attic is taught before Homeric. We're unusual in many ways, and that's one of them. So if you are a rising freshman, we will take you and we will blend you with the rising sophomores. We'll have, I don't know how it's going to work yet. There'll be a couple of classes and we'll work on Attic Greek this year. And then when you're a sophomore, don't worry, you will have to memorize the first 5 lines of the Iliad and do all that fun stuff. You will not lose out in the experience. As a sophomore, you'll do Homer, which I have to tell you, it intrigues me because usually it's just the freshmen who do Homer. So I'm kind of curious to see what you'll be able to do. Likewise in English, And I, quite frankly, wouldn't even entertain this notion were it not for the fact that Dr. Human and Mr. Smith are expert instructors and can pull this off. We're going to blend you, and all of you will be mixed into two separate classes, but study the 10th grade books and get the kind of instruction for your writing that is appropriate for where you are right now. And then rising freshmen, when you become 10th graders, you'll actually study the 9th grade books. And I hope you don't think it's a demotion of any sort. I mean, things like Homer and Frankenstein and Shakespeare can be read, and we want you to read them at all ages. So it doesn't really matter if you're reading them in 9th and 10th grade. So that is our plan. We think we can leverage putting the two groups together to make sure you will have more face time, which is crucial for us, it's crucial for you. And I think, if you've been around TJ enough, it's really hard to distinguish between juniors and seniors because they get mixed in a lot of classes too. That's the kind of community I think we'd like to create for you in these 2 years before you get to your upper two years of TJ. If there are any questions, you can certainly ask them at the end or email me, and I'll do my best to answer. But I think everyone involved is really excited about mixing you guys up and teaching you. So I will stand back, and Mrs. Roth, as usual, you dominate the rest of the conversation.
Thank you. Go ahead and flip to the next slide, please. All right, I just, it's fair, as Dr. Holkamp said, to acknowledge the heavy disappointments that we all felt at not being able to be physically together this last quarter. But I just want to end my own remarks by sharing that this experience that we all lived through, that we had never lived through before, did leave us with some gifts. First among those is the gift of resisting complacency. We teachers ask you students, and I'm talking to you students out there who showed up tonight, to stretch yourselves every single day, to do things that make you uncomfortable in the pursuit of knowledge and growth. And more than ever before, your teachers, my colleagues, are asking the same things of ourselves every single day. We are stretching and growing to give you the best possible experience that you can have next year. And the pandemic created an urgency around that, and I'm grateful for it. Doing so makes us more resilient. It makes us more flexible, and most importantly, it makes us more empathetic. Finally, and I'm really talking to the parents out there, I guess, with this last part, but the gift of your encouragement and your commitment to this little school and your support as we worked through this thing that none of us have experienced in our lifetimes, and I hope we never will again. It was a gift, and so I will just end by expressing my awe of and gratitude to this community. So thanks.
Yeah, it's quite special, the experience that we went through and what we're building for the future. Let me take them just the time right now to introduce one more voice, and that's our president of the Board of Trustees, Mrs. Winchell, who's going to kind of allow us to look a little bit beyond this next fall.
Thanks, Dr. Troutman. Am I on? No? Okay. Thank you. The first thing I want everyone to do is to save the date for our Founders Weekend, February 12th to the 14th of 2021. And what the heck, go crazy and use a pen. But we will be celebrating TJ's 75-year history, and we will be looking forward to the next 75 years. There is a group of talented, creative people planning the events for that weekend, and there will be many activities. It will be great. There will be an opportunity to make connections with friends classmates, alums, families across generations. It will be an amazing weekend. So I hope everyone can hold that date and be there. There are just a couple updates from the Board of Trustees. There's obviously been a lot of amazing planning work done for fourth quarter and for the fall. The board is planning for the long term. TJ will be around a long, long time, another 75 years, and we are engaged in strategic planning. That work has been extended in light of all the short-term planning that has been done, but the short-term planning is definitely informing the long-term work of the strategic planning committee. And so that is proceeding apace, and we are really looking forward to the future. And the last thing I wanted to just mention is that last December, the board created a standing committee on diversity, equity, and inclusion, which seems particularly appropriate to be talking about now. That committee is engaged in work planning the use of resources to further that work and to ensure that those issues are addressed and incorporated into all of our programs and curriculum. So I will leave it at that and turn it back to you, Dr. Troutman.
Thanks again. So to respect some time, I realize we've gone a little bit over, so I want to just leave you with some next steps. And of course, it wouldn't be TJ if we didn't start with OR. So OR begins next week. And so you should have received all of the messages about what you need to be doing, but if not, please contact your teachers. I also want to point out that we normally send out a summer message about some of the information, including forms and what you can look for over the rest of the summer. We plan to send that out on June 22nd, and that will just have some of the logistical details that you want as you go into the summer. I pointed out before that we are anticipating guidance from either the state of Missouri or St. Louis County in terms of school reopening policies and procedure sometime at the mid or late part of this month. So we will be able to put some things in from pencil to pen at that time, but we have to kind of wait for that guidance. Obviously, I just want to reiterate that we will continue to be planning as we go through the summer. The fourth quarter showed us what is possible, and I think I'm very now excited about jumping into this next school year. I'm very lucky to have the colleagues that I do and the students and parent support to be able to pull this off well. And then just want to point out that once that guidance comes out, we'll be able to make some more concrete plans, and we will follow up with a communication sometime in mid-July with a little bit more details than we could provide right now at this moment. And I just have to end with, we are planning for opening day, August 26, 2020, in person. And man, I cannot wait to see you all in person at that point. Yeah, I started with just saying how proud I am of the community, and it's at these moments that makes the hard work worthwhile when we have such support from all of you. So let me just end the official part by saying thank you. Thank you to everyone who has been a part of our community. So I am going to hopefully correctly stop the Facebook live stream, which will stop our recording. And I want to open up to some questions. If anything comes up, you can enter it into the chat. If you click on the participants tab, you should have an option to raise your hand. Hopefully that sends a notification to me, and then I can have you jump in here. But I am going to hit that.